The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional flicker of fluorescent light above his head. Adam Neumann sat alone at a long wooden table, his tall frame folded awkwardly into the chair, eyes locked on nothing in particular. The conference room smelled faintly of stale coffee and cold glass. Just months earlier, these rooms had been buzzing with bankers, investors, and lawyers whispering about billions. Now, the silence was suffocating. A folder lay open in front of him, pages filled with numbers that no longer meant anything. The IPO that was supposed to crown him king of the new economy had instead dragged him into the dirt. The headlines called it a disaster. The empire he built with words, charisma, and endless confidence had collapsed in front of the entire world. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to himself, "How did it come to this?" The answer wasn't in the spreadsheets, or in the mocking articles filling every news site. The answer was buried in years of ambition, of hunger, of believing he could bend reality itself. It hadn't started in ruins. It started in hope. Adam Neumann was born in Israel, in a land where ambition was both a necessity and a burden. His childhood was marked by movement, instability, and a restless energy that never allowed him to stay still. His parents' divorce, the chaos of early life, the struggle of fitting in, he carried it all like a hidden fire. He was tall, impossibly tall, with a presence that filled rooms even when he said nothing. He knew the power of his own charisma before he knew how to use it. When he moved to New York, he arrived with nothing but restless dreams and a desire for more. He tried small businesses, silly ideas, ventures no one remembers now. Baby clothes with padded knees. Party schemes, half-baked attempts at catching lightning in a bottle. None worked. But he had something sharper than ideas. He had the conviction that he was destined for greatness. He repeated it to anyone who would listen. "I will be a billionaire," he would say, with no trace of doubt. And then came the seed, WeWork. It began not as a revolution, but as a simple shared office space. Desks, chairs, coffee machines. But Adam didn't sell desks. He sold community. He sold a dream. In a city of loneliness and ambition, he promised belonging. In a world of cold offices and sterile corporations, he promised energy, creativity, the warmth of connection, and people bought it. Investors saw him and believed, not in the business, but in the man himself. He walked into rooms with his long hair flowing, barefoot at times, speaking in riddles that somehow felt profound. "We are not just creating offices," he would say, voice rising, eyes burning with conviction. "We are elevating the world's consciousness." The bankers nodded. The venture capitalists opened their wallets. He wasn't pitching real estate. He was pitching religion. The money poured in. Billions, each round higher than the last. SoftBank, the massive Japanese investor, saw him as the messiah of a new generation. Masayoshi Son, a man who fancied himself a visionary kingmaker, looked at Adam and saw his perfect protege. "Go big," Son told him. "Be crazier." Adam didn't need encouragement. He already believed he was building not a company, but a new way of life. The offices multiplied. New York, San Francisco, London, Tokyo. Glass towers filled with plants, kombucha on tap, neon slogans screaming, "Hustle harder." Young dreamers moved into these spaces and felt like they were part of something grander. It wasn't just a desk, it was an identity. And Adam rose with it. The billionaire he had promised to become appeared before his eyes. Parties at lavish estates. Private jets whisking him from continent to continent. Interviews where journalists stared, hypnotized, as he spoke of world peace, energy, consciousness, community. He stood on stages, arms outstretched like a prophet, speaking of making the world better while spending millions on personal luxuries. His wife, Rebecca, whispered in his ear, feeding the vision. She spoke of light, of consciousness, of destiny. She told him he was chosen, that together they would heal the world. To their followers, it felt like gospel. To their critics, it was delusion. But no one could deny the scale of their ambition. The valuation of WeWork soared 10 billion, 20 billion, 30, 40, and then the impossible, $47 billion. A number so absurd, it seemed untouchable. The higher it went, the more untouchable Adam felt. He was no longer just a businessman. He was the golden boy of Silicon Valley, the embodiment of everything new money worshipped: disruption, arrogance, and the illusion of limitless growth. But cracks were already spreading beneath the surface. Behind the glass walls and slogans, the finances were bleeding. Billions in losses, reckless spending, questionable decisions. But Adam waved it all away. Growth is everything, he told his employees. If we grow fast enough, the money will take care of itself. The employees believed because they wanted to. Investors believed because they had no choice. And Adam believed because he needed to. The IPO was supposed to be his coronation, the final step in transforming from a dreamer into an untouchable king. He walked into that summer with his head high, certain that Wall Street would bow to him the way venture capital had. But Wall Street was different. Wall Street demanded numbers, logic, discipline. And when the documents were released, when the world finally saw the truth behind the slogans, the mask fell. Losses in the billions, conflicts of interest. A CEO who had sold the word "we" to his own company for millions. A man who leased his own properties back to his empire. A family dressed as saviors while draining the system dry. The world laughed. Headlines dripped with mockery. The most ridiculous IPO of the decade. From visionary to villain, investors who once praised him now turned their backs. Employees whispered about his arrogance, his unpredictability, his flights of delusion. The board, once loyal disciples, now conspired in silence. And Adam, still clinging to his vision, walked barefoot through the halls as if nothing had changed. "We will still change the world," he told them. But no one believed any more. The coup was quiet but brutal. He was forced to resign, stripped of power. The empire left in ruins. His billions melted into thin air. His reputation turned into ash. The same newspapers that once celebrated him now painted him as a fraud, a clown, a symbol of hubris. The man who wanted to elevate the world's consciousness couldn't even elevate his own company into profit. And so here he sat, in a silent room, staring at the papers that told him the truth he could no longer deny. The fall had been swift, violent, public. But as Adam Neumann leaned forward, hands clasped, a strange smile touched his lips. Because deep down, a fire still burned. He wasn't done. Not yet. The silence pressed in around him, heavy and suffocating. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed. The empire was gone. The vision was shattered. But in the shadows of his mind, the whisper of ambition still echoed. And the world was about to learn that a man like Adam Neumann never truly surrenders. The darkness thickened, and the story had only just begun. The night after his resignation, Adam Neumann walked barefoot across the cold marble floor of his penthouse. The city spread out beneath him, glittering, indifferent, alive in ways that mocked him. Just weeks earlier, he would look at these lights and think of them as his kingdom. Now, they felt like stars on a ceiling he would never touch again. His phone buzzed with messages, investors demanding explanations, employees begging for reassurance, journalists clawing for quotes. He ignored them all. He poured himself a drink, the sound of liquid hitting glass breaking the silence. Rebecca sat on the sofa, her voice soft, almost maternal. "They don't understand you," she whispered. "They never did," Adam muttered, staring into the amber swirl. "They think you're finished," she said. "But you and I, we know better." Her words wrapped around him like a spell. He wanted to believe her. He needed to. But in the shadows of that room, even he could feel the weight of humiliation pressing down. The world outside was merciless. Former allies ran from him, eager to scrub his name from their resumes. Reporters dissected his every move, his barefoot antics, his tequila-fueled parties, his messianic speeches. The IPO prospectus had become a public autopsy. It wasn't just failure. It was spectacle. He had been paraded before the world and stripped of dignity, reputation, and power. Still, Adam refused to see himself as broken. In his mind, this was only an interruption, a test. He told friends he would return stronger, bigger, unstoppable. "This is not the end," he insisted. "This is just a pause." But the pause was heavy. Everywhere he went, whispers followed. Former employees spoke of chaos, of paranoia, of a leader drunk on his own image. Investors who once called him a visionary now called him reckless. The aura that had once hypnotized rooms now repelled them. The fall from grace was complete, and yet Adam clung to the remnants of his dream like a drowning man grasping driftwood. He wandered his empty properties, walking past desks abandoned, plants dying, slogans peeling from the walls. "Do what you love," one read in neon, flickering as if mocking him. The energy was gone. The community he had promised had dissolved into bitterness and unemployment. The dream of elevating consciousness had collapsed into unpaid bills and broken leases. The sound of silence haunted him more than the criticism. He missed the rush of applause, the roar of investors begging to pour billions into his vision. He missed being the center of gravity in every room. He missed the intoxicating certainty that he was destined to change the world. Now he was left with memory. He remembered the day SoftBank promised him billions more. Masayoshi Son's words still rang in his ears. "In a fight between smart and crazy, crazy wins." Adam had taken it as prophecy. But in the end, crazy didn't win. Crazy bled investors dry and collapsed under its own weight. He remembered the IPO roadshow, a smug certainty on his face as he stood before Wall Street analysts. He remembered their cold stares, their polite nods, the way they dissected him not as a prophet, but as a liability. He remembered the laughter, the cruel headlines, the mocking tone of late-night television hosts turning his dreams into punchlines. And still, even in the pit of memory, he told himself, "They will regret laughing at me." Time passed, but the wounds stayed fresh. His empire was carved up, sold off, dismantled by men in suits who once bowed to him. His name was poison. His image, a caricature. The fall had not been private. It had been televised, dissected, immortalized. Yet Adam was not the kind of man who learned humility in failure. No failure only made him more dangerous. He began to plot in the shadows. New ventures, new ideas. The same messianic energy, the same delusional certainty. He spoke of housing projects, of new communities, of rebuilding from the ashes. To some, he was finished. To Adam, he was reborn. But beneath the bravado, the truth lingered. He was isolated, distrusted, mocked. His billions had shrunk. His empire was gone, and the vision of elevating humanity had revealed itself as little more than smoke. On quiet nights, when the city was silent and even Rebecca's reassurances fell flat, Adam would walk the halls alone. He would pause in front of mirrors, staring at the man reflected back at him. Tall, disheveled, haunted. He would whisper to himself, "You are still chosen. You are still the one." But the mirror never answered. The world had moved on. New startups rose. New billionaires filled the magazines. His name remained, yes, but as a cautionary tale, not a legend. In boardrooms, his story was invoked not as inspiration, but as warning. Hubris, delusion, the danger of believing too much in a man, and too little in the math. The once golden boy of Silicon Valley had become its ghost. And yet, somewhere inside him, the fire still burned. Because men like Adam Neumann are not wired to surrender. They don't fade quietly into obscurity. They linger in the shadows, waiting for a chance to strike again. But the question remained, was he truly a visionary, brought down by the blindness of others? Or was he a fraud who finally faced the weight of reality? The answer depends on who tells the story. In his own mind, Adam is not finished. He is waiting. He believes the world will once again bend to his voice, his smile, his impossible conviction. He believes he was born to rise, and that one fall does not erase destiny. But destiny is cruel. The city lights still shine outside his windows, indifferent and cold. They remind him that empires rise and fall, and that memory is not the same as power. He built a company that promised to change the world. Instead, he became the embodiment of its delusions. The final irony is this. Adam Neumann wanted to elevate consciousness, but he could not elevate himself above greed, excess, and ego. He wanted to be remembered as a prophet. Instead, he is remembered as a warning. And as he sits in silence, the laughter of the world still echoes faintly, like ghosts at the edges of his mind. The man who once dreamed of reshaping the future is left haunted by a single truth. Sometimes the greatest visionaries are only dreamers who flew too close to the sun, and the fall is not a lesson. It is a sentence,